an uncle named Ben, who is my father's third brother. The story I'm about to tell you is also related to him, a man who is extremely addicted to gambling. After losing his job, Uncle Ben couldn't find work. Every night he would go to the casino and try to make a living by this so-called profession. My aunt always tried to stop him, but she never could. In those days, she took care of everything alone. She took care of the whole family and 2 small children. My uncle just gambled. He played 10 times and lost 9 times. The family's assets were gone. There was a day when Uncle Ben didn't come home for 2 days. My aunt didn't go to look for him because that wasn't the first time. On the 3rd night, my uncle returned. My aunt guessed that he only came home because he lost all his money again. But this time, his face was proud. He took out more than 50 million from his pocket and gave it to her and said it was all for her. This proved that he won. He finally won. It was the first time my aunt saw this, and more importantly, my uncle promised never to lose again. He also proudly told her about how he won this game. Yesterday, he played mahjong with some people. He would first lose continuously. All his money was lost, everything, and the people in the casino would kick him out and wouldn't let him play anymore. But even though he begged for the casino to let him continue playing, he was still punished and banned. As he was standing in the hallway cursing, someone called his name from behind. The man told my uncle that maybe he should try praying to the god of fortune. Maybe then he would win. My uncle didn't show any interest in this. He did not believe in any god. He would sometimes consider praying to different gods, but no god ever helped him to win in gambling. The man continued to persuade my uncle, saying that ordinary begging would not be effective. This made my uncle a little curious. He needed to know where to pray to get this effect on him. The man offered to drive my uncle to the place where he could pray to that god. So the 2 of them went straight and deep into the forest. They crossed a large tree path to a small statue. The stone statue, placed neatly in the forest, was also covered with a red scarf on its head. The man showed my uncle how to pray. He needed to use his hair and nails, as well as blood, to make prayers work for this god. My uncle found it strange, but he still wanted to try it because he had nothing to lose. And after thinking about it, my uncle decided to pull out some of his hair. He took some hair, nails, as well as blood, and placed it in a bowl in front of the god statue as an offering. After that, he clasped his hands in prayers, and he would pray that he could win every bet he made. As soon as the prayer ended, the wind blew across the statue. That caused the veil to fly off. When the strong winds blew away the veil to reveal the statue's damaged and fierce face, my uncle became scared. He thought maybe he should not have prayed to this statue or altar at all. After leaving, he went back to the casino to borrow money from others to try his luck once again. True to the promise of the stranger and the prayer he made, he won every single bet he made. The amount of money earned was too much to handle. Once my uncle bet 10 times and won 9 times, no longer as unlucky as before. But every time he won, he would start feeling tired and he would start panting like he had just run 3 kilometers. He coughed for many days. My aunt advised him to stop gambling, but he still did not listen to her. Every time he came home from gambling, he would bring back a lot of money, which surprised her. But in terms of health, he was not as good as the night before. In just 2 weeks, my uncle lost weight, went from 80 kilograms to only 65. Seeing such an unusual transformation made my aunt worry. She cared about him a lot. She knew he was hiding something from her, but she couldn't convince him to tell her because he thought he had to earn a few billion more before he stopped. The next day, even though he was not feeling well, he still decided to continue to go to the casino to play. My uncle kept winning and winning, and he collected a lot of money. But in the fifth game, another player won. My uncle then struggled to breathe. He tried to scream but fell over through the table. It seemed he was having a heart attack. Everyone was shocked. Someone called the ambulance to take him to the hospital. However, he sadly passed away even before the ambulance arrived. My aunt received the bad news and she rushed to the hospital. She cried bitterly because she couldn't say goodbye to him for the last time. He was gone. In just 1 month, my uncle had lost nearly 20 kilograms before his passing, and his health seemed to be declining rapidly. My aunt suspected something was off and asked the doctor for an autopsy. When the results came back, she was shocked, for the cause of death could not be determined, nor could the doctor explain anything in a scientific way. My aunt was shunned by her husband's death. She suspected that his death was related to some evil deity. So she decided to go to the spiritual place in the forest to find out. When she arrived at the forest, following the instructions of a few people, she looked everywhere but couldn't find any statues or altars. It's been 3 long years since my uncle had died, yet his death still remains a mystery that has made my aunt and our family extremely heartbroken and sad. I heard this story a long time ago. At one company, workers often worked overtime and left very late to earn extra income. Near 9 o'clock in the evening, a young man named Carol had just finished his shift. Carol was offered a carpool by a colleague, but because the two were not on the same road, Carol refused and intended to take a bus to go home. The factory where the guys worked was in the suburbs, and the last bus back to the city left at 9:20 p.m. and arrived at the pickup station around 9:30 p.m. The young man thought he was in time to catch the bus, so when he got out of the factory, the other man drove back first. At this time, the young man looked at his watch. Unexpectedly, it was almost 9:30. Carol knew he could be late, so he rushed to the nearest bus stop. The bus stop was a few minutes by motorbike from the factory. He had to run at full speed to get to the station. When he got there, he was almost out of breath, panting. The young man looked at his watch once again, and a worried expression about afraid of not being on time. Unfortunately, the clock struck 9:40 p.m., meaning the last bus left the station more than 10 minutes ago. The way back to the city also became longer because it was difficult to catch a car here. Carol was disappointed. He had missed the last bus. He thought about having to take a taxi back to the city and worried about money. While Carol was thinking that, a bus arrived. When the bus arrived, Carol was overjoyed, thinking that the bus was late as he was. This might have been the only exception ever. It could also be considered as Carol's luck. The bus creaked to a stop in front of Carol. Because Carol often rode the bus at this hour, he recognized the familiar driver at a glance. What was strange was that there were so many people on the bus. Normally, at this time of day, only about 1 or 2 passengers would be there. This was even more crowded than usual. Only one person on the bus had been following Carol's every move since he got onto it. It was a middle-aged man whose expression changed when he saw Carol. Not paying any attention to this, Carol slowly found an empty seat near the back of the bus and sat down. The man was still staring at Carol and thinking about something. To avoid the angry look, Carol purposely turned his head toward the window and looked out. Unexpectedly, the man stood up and went straight to where Carol was sitting. He approached without a word, and a hostile look on his face, like Carol had done something wrong with him. Moments later, the man suddenly swung his fist and punched Carol's face. Unable to take it anymore, Carol angrily stood up and argued with the man. He wondered why he hit people like that. Carol didn't have time to say anything when the man ferociously grabbed him by the collar and wanted to drag him out of the bus because he was not pleasing to the eye. He didn't understand what was happening. He just wanted to push the man away, but he couldn't. He begged the people on the bus to help him. But none of the people on the bus would speak up, as if they could neither see Carol nor know what was happening on that bus. Then the man pulled Carol to the front of the bus while he was shouting that he needed to get out of the bus urgently. Despite Carol protesting, the man kept asking him to get off the bus. The driver did not say anything and motioned for the bus to stop. At this time, the bus door was also open. Immediately, the man pulled Carol out of the bus without once looking back at him. The bus door quickly slammed shut, and the bus continued to move. When the bus drove away, the middle-aged man let go of his hand and watched as the bus was slowly disappearing. Suddenly he sighed, his face drenched with sweat. He suddenly changed his expression and told Carol that he was scared to death just now. Carol froze in place, thinking the man was losing his mind, so he acted like that. This man saw a suspicious and confused look on Carol, so he told him that they were riding on a ghost bus. The man also recounted the process of getting on this bus. Once settled into position, he sensed that something was wrong. The first was that the people on the bus were all lifeless, not talking or breathing. He immediately looked around to examine the situation. The bad luck was that he discovered that all the passengers on the bus had no legs. Only then did he realize that they were not human at all. He was afraid to make a sound and didn't know what to do until he saw Carol getting onto the bus. He realized Carol was a real person, alive. So, he had to think of a way for both of them to get off of the bus. The man made it clear to Carol and told him to hurry home. Carol thought the man didn't look like a madman lying. By that time there were no more buses, so he decided to take a taxi to go home. When he got into the taxi, Carol and the driver accidentally heard the news broadcast on FM radio that the police had found a bus which jumped off the bridge and fell into the river at 4 p.m. The news reached his ears, sending chills down his spine. Soon after, information about the bus was made clear. All 9 passengers and the driver died. What was even more bizarre was that it was the same bus that Carol was on.